And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another review recap of Godfather of Harlem. It's your team from Big Gold Belt, Lucas, my guy, Najir. What is going on this evening, sir?
What it do, sir? Lovely evening, peace and blessings.
Clear blessings as we're learning in this episode, not all white people are evil. It takes a while. I mean, it took a while for Malcolm to learn his lesson.
Yeah.
When he learned it, boy, did he learn it. So at least we know
Mhm.
the path of history going down here. But this episode, episode 3, is called Mecca for the obvious reasons why that name would be the use of everything synonymous with Malcolm X that we know of, and for this episode in a different meaning between the relationship of Bumpy and Jose battle. So let's start off there as we get to see the opening of their relationship. How did you like the way they started out and decided to go into showing you how this relationship is going to work between Bumpy and Jose?
Yeah, it's important because from every partnership, relationship, and deal that Bumpy has, we need to be introduced of what that looks like. We always know, especially with the Italians, there was always a level of dishonesty. There was some envy, all those sorts of different things. So what makes this even different? What makes this one different? And because of the declaration of that, the two of them are saying, hey, we're both minorities to this Italian thing. We're minorities because of the color of our skin. So we have similarities because of what, it's happening in your country, what's happening in my country. So this one's being formed on a different foundation. So this introduction definitely gave us a little bit more confidence in terms of what they were going to be. So I love how they did it. Obviously, when you talk about the production of how they did, I thought the whole setup and everything was dope. Being able to see everyone's face, being able to see how everyone around trust Bumpy. There was no shadiness in it. So we was able to get quick emotions from these folks. And then Bumpy, not only does he get to make a toast, he even gets to throw a little joke in there. So that means he's comfortable, So I think, from the beginning, we can say as we go down this journey, like, okay, this one's different. This one's strong. This one is potentially very powerful, and it is intimidating to the Italians. And this was a move to show the viewers, like, hey, okay, yeah, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with because now they trust each other. So let's see what they do.
Exactly. Now, what did you also think about Jose pulling the card right at the beginning of the episode of saying, hey, I backed you. Here's a favor I'm going to ask. And almost it's like a test. Like, depending on how you react to this favor, depends how this partnership moves forward. What do you think just about him laying out the cards and then not being dragged on, as you see so many of these shows, episode after episode before they pull this card and he's like, nah, I'm gonna pull this up front. Like, I need you to kill somebody.
Yeah.
And this is the person I need you to kill.
First of all, can you talk about how the judge is always this? He's just always on the outside there. I don't want to be around no guns. Always got to say or do something. So I love that as well too.
He waits to get punked. That's all it is. Every episode, he waits to get punked by somebody.
Honestly, one of my favorite comedic reliefs for this entire series. Like every single time he's in it, he's gonna say something wild. So I definitely appreciate that. But yeah, right to the punch. And for me, my attendance kind of went up. I was like, okay, what's this gonna be? And I actually thought it was gonna be drugged out. But as we got straight to it, I was like, okay, this is interesting because while there has sort of been a foundation of trust, it then saying if we're going to trust each other, we're going to make money because money brings money. We already established why we're here, and already established our backgrounds and why we're here. But now it's like we're going forward. We already said all that. Forget this honeymoon era. Let's get to work. And he said, I need you to do a favor. And I instantly thought, if he is, I thought of a lot of things, but I had no clue the vendetta that he had going back into Cuba. And as we know from the previous episode, Jose has been very adamant about the one thing he wants to do, and it's to seek revenge on his country, predominantly or specifically Fidel Castro. And so now you're hearing like, oh, I need you to go after somebody that's affiliated with him. And we've talked, especially in this era, us too, and anybody who's watched our reviews, we talked a lot about the war, the landscape and the climax of the war, and how that affected so many different countries. Where we talk about America or Mexico or South America.
Man.
So as things start to unravel here, I'm starting to like, okay, I understand exactly what's happening. So for me, this episode was interesting because like we have so much historical context to it, which hopefully in this recap, you know, we can relay it to the viewers, letting them know that like, hey, listen, this Jose guy, right? there's a lot in this little statement of saying I need you to go kill this guy, because you have to wonder, you got all the guns, you got all of it. Is it a test? But why? And understanding, especially for folks who watch Snowfall, understanding it actually is exactly Snowfall if you think about it right now.
Yep. I mean, he's the Cuban Franklin.
Yes,
technically,
or Franklin is Bumpy, and then Jose is
I'm about to say, now think about the other chord of it, from who Franklin partnered with and what he had to do. It's almost the same equivalent here. It's just a different war. Franklin was helping fund one war. Jose is helping fund a completely different war with a completely different reason.
Yeah, exactly. What's his name? Why is his name slipping out of my head? Which we're back for Snowfall in the month, folks. Y'all already know what it is. Yeah, you know we back for it. Why is his name slipping in my head? Franklin's working with? Yeah, Avi. Thank you. No, well, Avi too. Yeah, well, you're actually right. I wasn't thinking Avi. I was thinking what's his name? But you're right. It is Teddy. Avi in this. Teddy.
Oh, you think about Teddy?
Teddy. Yeah, you're right. You're right. It is Avi. Is exactly Avi in this, but it also is kind of Teddy too. But it's definitely Avi too. But same dynamics, different wars.
Exactly. Now here, speaking of something with historical reference, and I'm gonna stick here and not bounce around because I want to just focus on his story right here for the entire episode, and that is Malcolm X's trip to Mecca. If you ever seen the movie of Spike Lee, you know how big of a journey this is. If you know anything about Malcolm X, you also know how this fundamentally changed his mind on his religion, how America works with his religion, and what he needed to do to bring back home to change people's mindset. What did you think about just the whole entire episode, the entire setup of Malcolm with Mecca, from him getting there, from we see or we perceive what to be racism, that they hold him at the border and imprison him, and then his conversations with the doctor who helps him out, even down to the race-related conversations, which is the most powerful things. If you ever read on anything of Malcolm X, that's the most powerful stuff that he went through to really focus his mind again. What do you think about the way they handled such a huge event in history in this episode?
So I believe I said this in previous reviews. I was never, and just because of the education system, we were never taught the history of Malcolm X. And as I got older, I started to consume some of his media, whether the book or different film iterations. But you know, focusing on this is the most humane we've seen Malcolm X on this series thus far.
Yes.
And I get so many different thoughts about this journey that he goes on. And some are comical. I'll say it, like, you know, him going to jail to find himself is a tradition. A lot of folks go to jail and they find their religion.
But
for him,
I think it's a tradition for Malcolm X also, because it's ain't the first time he went to jail to get clarity.
So you know, maybe you have to get behind bars, but more or less you have to be isolated in order to really dig deep to figure out, you know, soul searching. That's what I put in my notes. So he's soul searching because he had a thought and he had a perception of what, you know, one, going to Mecca was going to be. You know, he knew he was going to be popular, but he got humbled really quick. And understanding that his voice, his name carried a certain distance, and Muhammad Ali carried a whole lot longer, understanding that he was the one that helped him convert. So understanding that, like, hey, sir, come off your high horse just a little bit here. Folks have heard about you, but you really do got to reevaluate your objectives, your goals, your narrative, and what you know in American Islam, vice versa, of what the world outside of America identify Islam. And so I like this. This for the first time was the first Malcolm X that felt the most uncertain that we've seen in this entire series. Anytime he had a plan, he went forward with it, you know, and from, you know, the most tensious moments of this series, he had a plan. And this was the first one where we seen him really just sit back and have to say, okay, maybe it's time for me to just sit back and listen. Maybe I need to consume. Maybe I need to change my mind a little bit. So to be honest, man, like this is the arc of this episode. It's the focus of Malcolm X truly learning, but yet soul searching. And when you think about and I keep forgetting the word, and hopefully I put it in my notes. But what did I say? The word when you're going out and he's learning more about his religion and whatnot, understanding that you know what he thought it was, he had to kind of recraft and reshape and go forward. So I you know, we'll talk about a little bit more because there's more parts to it. I just really appreciate just being able to see the humane side of him in a way that was like easily consumable and digestible, and wasn't over the top hard with the religion, but this understanding that like Malcolm X was not always so right or so, you know, you know, a lot of those things. So I appreciate it.
It was a time period where he let the biasness of America bleed into what he thought Mecca would become.
Yeah.
And that's again, as a kid, I'm not gonna say forced in a bad way, but I was 7 when I was told I had to read the biography of Malcolm X. Yeah. So just imagine a 7-year-old, all of his second grade education, had to read the biography of Malcolm X. But I love this part of the episode because again, this is a part of the episode where we do see Malcolm unsure of how he should go forward with his religion in Mecca, and then the way he can translate that to America, because he brought a lot of preconceived notions with him. I guess one, the point that he saw that man and thought of him as white automatically shows you the bias and racism that because it's inflicted on Black people that they carried along with them. As the guy said, like, you know, you all are no longer in chains, but you are still imprisoned. He said, you see me, are there no good white people in America?
Yeah.
And what is it? Allah is supposed to take away your color from you. You're just supposed to be able to see your Muslim brother. And it blew Malcolm X away. Yeah. That one, a white man would invite him in his house, as he called it. Granted, that man was not white. But as you said, a white man would invite him in his house. A white man offered to pray with him. Like, these are things far out the thought process of something that he would see in America. And I think those again, this is the most important pilgrimage that Malcolm X goes through in his life. And we know, anyone who knows history, you kind of know after this happens that you get a completely different, a little bit more radical Malcolm X comes back to America. So that's why I love the way that they showed this, because it's highly important to see this aspect of him.
Yeah, it's something I was about to say, and it just quickly went out of my mind. But I could be wrong here, but I'll just say it just because I believe there's another time in this series that Malcolm X is called racist, and he completely rebuttals.
Yes,
and it shows you the dynamics of somebody else saying it, and it's not, you know. And granted, you could say, well, because it's his Muslim brother or whatnot. Fine, but either way, you know, he's never a man short of words here. As he mentioned, he's had one of the most powerful speeches at this point. So folks know his word carry across the world. And he said, he said, nah, so you're racist. And my man Malcolm had nothing to say. And I think that was just the biggest indication of saying, like, what he all thought was something. And then, granted, we got to hear about his past and the trauma with his past. Like, and it does pay a lot of significance in anybody who's been through something like that. I couldn't imagine if I seen something like that. How could I go for it? And granted, there's folks of all races that have had situations where they can say this has completely blinded me about my grace for that race, you know. And so again, him being called racist, it was like one of those moments where he just had sat back and he had nothing to say, and I was like, oh, this is going to be something here, and this is again a very strong start, as we covered a lot of it, a strong start to this arc of the importance and significance of this Mecca trip in Saudi Arabia for Malcolm X.
Hey, down to the point of the guy bringing up, hey, isn't this civil rights bill going to change something? And the quickness that Malcolm completely dismissed that, right? Oh, we can use their bathrooms now, but that's it. Like he saw it bluntly, like that's not going to fix anything. But then that also shows the importance of Malcolm's message has traveled far across the globe to them, but it also kind of showed that Dr. King's message at the same time did the exact same thing. And we see the difference in their message, but we see the difference in people's reaction to their message.
Yeah.
One comes a lot with hope. The other one at this point with Malcolm X came with anger of, I can't believe, what do I have to do to take this power away from you? And then you got a white man in front of your face preaching to you technically the message of someone who, while you did respect him, you didn't like the message he was sending, which is that we all can live together, until he took this trip and realized, certain elements of that may be true. So I think, again, this is something interesting to see. It leads us to can't wait to see what happens with Malcolm for the rest of this series, this season, because we kind of know the direction he goes into. But
I'll be honest real quickly, like as a person who's spiritual, I gotta say, like, this is a convincing factor to see the good side of being Muslim, because to show where we see a sense of world peace, to understand that the conflict in America that roots down to just the pure color of your skin is not an issue because of what a religion is preaching in another country. And granted, I'm not about to go down a whole rabbit hole of this here, because I'm not about to sit here and say like everything Saudi Arabia does is holy.
Please don't.
Nah, but I'm saying that, like, if you wanted to give somebody that pamphlet in terms of saying, hey, would you like to join us? I think this is a good introductory statement of saying, like, there's a lot of shit in America that y'all dealing with. If you don't want to deal with that, you can come here, and that's not a problem here. You got to think like, I am kind of tired of that police brutality, and I'm kind of just, would like to just be with the same people that has the same thing I got going on. And granted, one more time, folks, I'm not saying we're
just gonna focus on the 60s here. In the 60s, this was a great message. We kind of know now that maybe that's not the best.
But
back then they was like, sir, you're black, we don't care, you're our Muslim brother. Woman, you will die if I see your ankles. Like, it's a completely different type of thing. But I think anyone with any ounce of knowledge fully understands what you're saying, because that's the way Malcolm saw it at the time. Like, this is not America. The same shackles that were placed on me there aren't placed on me here.
One of the most powerful advocates of this religion and the country and in social injustice and all of that is the thought of saying that, wow, this is the source of the solution of what I need to take back. That's what I'm ultimately trying to say here, is understanding that this is a convincing factor for him. I think anybody on any lower level could be like, doesn't sound like a bad idea. You know what I mean? Yep. I'm tired of being scared that any given moment I could go outside and be hemmed up off the cops just by looking black. Just looking black.
I mean, not even by looking black. Just a little pep in my step, and that's all it takes right there. Yep.
But yeah, man. Good first part of this episode.
Exactly. Let's get chronologically back into the episode here. As next up, we get Mamie, and she's meeting with Reverend Powell, and we get her served paperwork by it's Assistant Attorney Pike.
Assistant DA Pike.
Pike. And I'm only going to skip ahead because her being served is only one part of it, but the other part of it is when we find out why she's being served, which is because, as Pike says, you gave this $50,000 donation. But we hear your husband is teamed up with Jose Battle. I'm going to ask you, do you think the Italians set this up? Because that's the first thing that pops into the head.
Hell no. I was actually on the money on this one. Because listen, bro, I mean, we know, and I'm trying to be fair to the show, and I'm trying to like not bring so much exterior knowledge into this. But as we know that Mr. Battle has guns, military grade guns. And I just kept thinking like, oh, sir, you either got to connect or you are to connect. And when you are to connect, you ain't a civilian, sir. The first thing I thought was like, oh, that's not just normal intel that's coming in. That's interior intel that is going on here. And there's a little bit of a leverage that the government, specifically the CIA, have for what they're trying to do here. Starting to add things up like, oh, the DA, and they know about Jose Battle. That's strange. That deal just happened. What? Oh, because y'all all
just happened.
Y'all all in the same office together. Oh, I see. Hell no, it had nothing to do with that tie. This is much. To me, I'd say this is much more high level. This is the government working the government here. These are the alphabet boys raging war against each other here. And when I heard that, I swear to God, later on in the episode when we get the Mamie and the lease conversation, I literally was like, I know exactly what they're about to say right here. I just knew the conversation that was going to be had, because you're going to feel when the government gets involved, everything gets shaken up. And this deal that looks good on paper, it looks like it's going to be a little bit problematic with everything around. And granted, I will say this I feel was not a move towards Mamie. I think they were going after Powell just in an indirect way. They think the leverage that she's making, the what's the word? Not the acceptance, but like the people rallying behind her and getting that popularity, that only strengthens Powell, who already got a relationship with the president here. I could imagine that type of influence, especially from the Negro community, cannot be good. Cannot be good.
Because they were going after Powell, or I just assumed it wasn't Powell they was going after. I just assume it was indirectly going after Jose.
Could be too. I think they win. I think it's a win-win here. I think they're like, what can we get from this? You know? So
one way or the other, we're gonna get somebody from this. But next up, we get Bumpy giving out the orders to his guy. I only bring this up because whenever these two are on screen, it's some of the funniest stuff humanly possible that happens here. From them saying, "Hey, Bump, I don't trust this. Why we got to work for him here?"
Yeah.
The whole time completely like disregarding that they ran to Jose because they needed help. It's some of the best scenes of this episode and of this season so far, when we see Bumpy go back to his two men and give instructions and watch them always manage to find a way to mess it up somehow, some way. So okay, that's a nice way to go about it. But next up, we get Stella and Joe.
Nat and Dale, man. Them dudes.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, man.
And with Stella, we get back to the same issue, and that is Stella feeling like she's a prisoner as Joe gets to her own place. And for some odd reason, she says she wants to go back to school. Now she wants to get a job. But we see Joe doing everything he can to keep her safe because he needs her father to be in his corner. What do you think about so far what we're seeing in this relationship? Some of the things that Joe said to Stella, and is he trying to pursue something with her? And just Stella's reluctance to listen to Joe at all, and still not tell him she knows who tried to kill her.
Yeah, I feel like I need to speak loudly into the mic here, so I'm gonna do that real quick. But tell me if we haven't seen this before, because for whatever reason, it's always the protection of Stella. But I'm also gonna try my hand with her, and then she's like,
same thing Ernie did.
No, and then she loosens. It's the same exact thing, but she is maturing. That is the one thing I will say. With her father being in jail, she is starting to stand on her 2 feet just a little bit more. She's still very immature, but she's actually trying to make moves to kind of, I guess, provide her own safety net, or at least mental safety, because she's been a prisoner the entire time. But it's the same thing. Joe trying his hand, I mean, come on now. She's been a damsel in distress for now 3 seasons. There's nothing different here. Again, I just see her just slowly trying to mature. So like everybody's gonna try to hand. She's attractive, and I think that attractive for a couple of reasons. Attracted by power, but attracted by looks. And I think that understanding that that's kind of beneficial. And I think Joe, who is kind of the wild card right now, especially how he goes about things.
Yep.
Understanding if he protects her, that's a thing. But also understanding that if he can actually win her love, that's also another level of protection for her father that he'll probably slowly come around to. I mean, he did it before. Yeah. So
exactly
same as that thing. But what's interesting here, and we obviously won't talk about much this episode, it will be to see how Stella then goes about it different, so she doesn't make the same mistake twice. Now she already got burnt from it the first time. Well, what's his name? Who got killed? Ernie. Sadly, Ernie. So now, what would she do different? Her husband, exactly. Who she was completely reluctant to that relationship the entire time. So we're going to see, what she does different on this one. But she does know, as you mentioned, she does know who came after her.
I'm about to say, I'm just still flabbergasted that Stella's choosing not to say, like, by the way, my stepmother tried to kill me. And that's who you need to be looking into here to help save me. Again, we already touched on the next couple of topics. The biggest next thing is Bumpy men. Again, this is what makes them so funny. Messing up the obvious hit. I love the conversation about the guns and which gun to use. And him saying the snub nose, that's way too much noise at night. The 22, man, that thing always jam, which 22 jam a lot. And then him saying, I got this gun, let's use this gun. Grab the wrong gun and bumble around everything humanly possible here. I'm going to combine this with the conversation next that they have with Bumpy. Were you expecting that to be Bumpy's reaction, or did you think Bumpy's going to kill one of these guys for messing this up?
I mean, he clearly has went out on the limb for both of them now.
Yep.
But Pettigrew is so fucking funny, and I just can't believe they went full blown rookie. The fact that they went back and told Bumpy right away without a second attempt was wild to me. But
yeah,
because the way how my man ran, and I wish I could like think of a similarity. It's a lot of things in my head, just cannot think of it. But my man definitely ran. He ran kind of like Waluigi from Mario. Like he was all slinky and whatnot. I was like, if they don't run his ass down right now, this dude ain't got no wheels on him.
It's like something from a the comedy scary movie when the guy ran away. Like,
exactly. And so it was just funny to me that I was like, I didn't even second the tape, but fine. So you go back into a Bumpy. I knew he was gonna blow his top, but I also realized that like there was no room to eliminate them because of this. But depending on what may have happened if he went back to Jose on this, he might have.
That's a completely different story.
So it all played out the way I thought it was gonna play out. So
Now, here's the other funny part of this though. You've tried to fire the gun 3 times, and then you didn't even chase after him. Like I couldn't have beat him to death with the gun instead. He acted like the only way I could kill him is if I shoot him. Like I can't kill him in any other way. It made it funny as heck. But then them also bringing back the information to Bumpy, like this guy's not a hitman.
Yeah,
he's not a killer. Like the look on his face told us this is possibly the first time he's ever had a gun pointed at him. Now, with this information getting back to Bumpy, one, did you think Bumpy would take it a different way, or did you think that Bumpy still understood, like, hey, in the end, I could care less who he is. I still got to kill him to keep my partnership.
I mean, I think that information and because they are his trusted hitters, I think that and if I'm not mistaken, Dale is ex-military, so
yeah,
I think there's like a level of like confidence from this intel from them for him to want to investigate more. If they had not said anything, then yeah, all of this changes. But I think they're coming out saying like this dude ain't no killer. Like the way that this dude ran. I mean, granted, you say all that and then you be like, so but you didn't kill him. So wait a minute. So this is a little
like in the end, you can tell me all that great stuff, but did you kill him?
yeah.
Like that's the goal. In life, the goal was still to kill him. I didn't care about anything else really. The goal was that he got to die to keep my partnership going.
just it was just odd to me, but I think all of this played out the way I expected it to. Bumpy just to now have the gears turning and figure out like I need to know more about this guy. So yeah.
Well, now here we are. Up next is the conversation you talked about earlier, and that is starts off between Mamie and Elise, and it goes into Bumpy and Bumpy's business practices, and Bumpy giving the ultimate ultimatum. Basically, if your business interferes with my business, screw your business, because my business is the key priority here.
Yeah.
Just go into your full thoughts about this conversation, because this is a highly important conversation about how powerful the government is, about them still being fearful that Bumpy could get back in jail, and also about, in a way, it feels Mamie like wanting Bumpy to put her interests above his.
That's it. So first thing I was like, she's gonna resent him. It's gonna be the first time she resents him, because she's finally making steamway. She's making progress, both for her self-employment, but for the community, and understanding that every time, not gonna say every time, but when it seems like she gets a little bit of momentum, but now that she's truly getting momentum, it always comes back to Bumpy being a PR issue for her. And now that she's at this level of success, and it comes about again, and I mean, it comes about it from the highest up, well, not the highest, because it still came from the assistant DA, but it did come from somebody pretty high on the pay scale. This made the conversation really hit home. Having a conversation with Elise, and Elise saying I didn't pick my dad and stuff like that, and it was a heartfelt moment, and take it for what it's worth. Mother-daughter conversations, and granted, forget all the who's really what and whatnot. It still is an important moment, because they both have the same they both have love for Bumpy, and so they understand everything he's doing is for the good of them. They understand that. They know that what he does has provided them opportunity, access, money, all that other good stuff. But yeah,
exactly.
His image is still problematic, and I think her by saying like this is the first time I resent him, I think that was real, but yet very raw. And yeah, I think she thinks, and we've seen this conversation before, in other shows. Can't think which one it is right now, but we've seen this other shows where
I was going to bring up this conversation in an exact show, almost in an exact circumstance.
Okay.
Did this not remind you of the conversation between Alton and Franklin?
Yeah, exactly.
How can you do all these great things? You give me these opportunities, but part of the opportunities you give me is based on destroying the community I'm trying to help build.
Yeah,
I think that's the issue here. When Mamie brings up when you're back to selling what you're selling, it's gonna have an impact on everything.
Yeah.
But then the whole thing is, what he's doing. At what point did you not think that this was going to cause you a problem?
Yeah.
It's the thought process that, hey, I don't have to worry about it right now. I can just close a blind eye to everything you're doing here.
Yeah.
Like, and this is a conversation Kyle told her in the prior episode. Like, hey, your husband doing things can cause us a problem. Yeah. And here is everything he said came to fruition in this episode.
Yeah.
All his concerns came to fruition here. And it was about the way Mamie was going to have to respond to it. And I think you put it perfectly. She's going to resent Bumpy for it. But in the end, is it anyone to blame but herself?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a harsh reality there, but you knew who you married. You knew what this man was doing. It's not a secret. How dare you become a community organizer like Barack Obama, and then your husband is up here flooding the streets? Like, you can't have it both ways here.
Yeah, listen, one of these shows are going to have to get this Queen Child's project done. So I'm gonna need y'all to separate yourself from this drug activity and figure it out, because looks like we got another failed attempt uploaded right now.
Man, that's not another. This was the beginning of the Queen's Child's project, and then after Bumpy failed, Ghost had to take it over. But now that Ghost has failed, we don't know who's the next person to step up for the Queen's Child's Project. At this point, we just know that them kids are still in the street hungry, and we still don't know what the purpose of the Queen's Child's Project is.
Not at all. Not at all.
Oh man! But I want to say the next big important thing that happens in this episode is the conversation between Bumpy and Jose. Because we kind of touched on everything with Malcolm at this point. We touched on everything with Mamie at this point. Yeah. I mean, besides her resigning, but that's not a big thing. It was Powell's reaction to her resigning that would have been the biggest piece of news here. Because in the end, after everything he said, he still wanted her to fight for being in that position because he understood her importance. But as you said earlier, when we asked, who did you think was responsible for it? And you said, man, these alphabet boys playing games with each other. It became clearly obvious that was what the case was when all this news gets plastered on the paper with an anonymous source, when technically it's only 3 people in their office. And none of them are the source. So you kind of understood. So again, playing all those games, the only thing of importance left is the conversation between Jose and Bumpy here. As Bumpy finally gets the guys, he takes it matters into his own hands. Decides to get the guy, but he decides to take the guy to Jose to get more information, it seems, about Jose's business.
Juan Madera. That's the journalist.
Yes. What did you think about the conversation between first Bumpy and Juan, of what he told him, and then with Jose and Bumpy?
Yeah, okay. Let me just, I'm just gonna throw all my thoughts out there. So I think with Juan Madera, the journalist, understanding the power of journalism during war. So this guy is absolutely a threat, and he's a threat because he's down in the war, seeing things for what they are. I think the most recent example of this, and you gotta be like a real big movie buff here, but if you've seen The Greatest Beer Run Ever, you've seen that, like, when you go to wars and you think it's one country versus the other country, and it's for whatever the reason is there, but understand that there's a lot of undertoning things happening too, and journalists find these things out. It's like, oh, okay, cool. So we're finding out that CIA is not only supplying guns, but also moving drugs too, and then funding the war. Okay, wait a minute. And when you hear these stories, because obviously the person who doesn't have this seat at the table or seeing these things happen around him, so this is the work of journalism. So nonetheless, this guy's an asset, because this guy comes back and blows everything up. And when you blow everything up, I mean, again, attention to Snowfall here. If you watch Snowfall, you know exactly where I'm going at with this. Like, understanding that, like, once this connection is derailed, then the struggle begins. And then there's a lot of unhappy people here, a lot of powerful people here, in all statutes, especially in the government and whatnot. So that's the first thing, is understanding that while this one guy that runs funny looks like he's just a guy that just got caught in the middle of this for no reason, no. No. This is a rat in the eyes of the government, yet he's doing the hard work. He's doing the true journalism work out there.
Well, hold up, let me stop you right there real quick. Is it that he's a rat, and he's not a rat in the eyes of his government?
No, I'm talking about our government. Yeah. I'm talking about our CIA government here.
But then they also managed to take sympathy away from him. So focus on your last thought, and then what do you think about when he brings up the Bumpy? Like Jose does all this with his family, and Castro for the people. Castro decided to damn near murder his entire family. Yeah. Like what was the thought process there? Because did you feel any sympathy for him until he mentioned that?
I did the entire time. Okay. Just because we just know when journalists get caught in this, it's rare that you find a journalist that don't have any integrity. They're going to tell the story for what it is, because that's their work. They're going to tell both sides, and they're going to just put it out there. Really rarely do you see a journalist try to swear a narrative shall I say, biased towards one country. When the fact that they're out there in the war, they just putting out the story. That's it. They're saying, this is what I see. This is how I'm articulating things. That's just what it is. So I felt sympathy for them the entire time. I mean, first of all, my man got a gun pointed at him in what, the same day or 2 days? I'm just like, bro,
like he just ain't prepared for this life. This was like, not part of his
rough, man. Yeah, this is rough. Like, my man was just trying to get a quick shower in, and then
but let me speak real quick before they just finish. I know this is throwing some of you all off because you all have went through, especially our young folk out there, of what journalism is to your generation, where where they just throw out everything, where Tory was innocent for a year and a half, and then you realize, oh shit, there's evidence here. Like, again, this is old school journalism where they actually had integrity and they didn't work for Neighborhood Talk or Spiritual World or Shade Room and throw out random things to confuse you here. This is a guy who feels like I'm justified in feeling the way I feel because of Jose Battle's family and what they have done to the country, and that I'm defending the leader of my country, even though that leader is looked at as being evil by everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Put in the context, when these journalists get caught, they're prisoners of war, and they're never going back home. Allow them to get executed, and if they are to stay alive, they've been tortured for years. I mean, when you hear about journalists being released or journalists being killed, and you're just like, I've never heard of that guy. That doesn't mean that guy could have been the most important person of that war, or part of that war, that didn't have a gun in their hand. Like, it's just that. And I could be wrong here, but I believe since to kind of help out this generation here, Brittany Griner, when she went to jail in Russia, there was talks about wanting an exchange, and at one point they wanted a journalist. They wanted a journalist, and they wanted this other person that was an arms dealer. Okay, you get the arms dealer, you're like, oh, you must have been fucking some people up. But you're like, journalist? I mean, I knew what's up, but you got other people like, who the hell is that?
Yeah.
Understand that this person who could, and granted, I could throw out other comparisons to folks, but granted, understand that these folks and their knowledge, WikiLeaks is another person that,
hey, my guy, just going back to Saudi Arabia that we talked about earlier. It clearly was a reporter that went over there and
never came
magically disappeared.
Yeah,
and no one ever saw him again.
Yep.
Like, this is known to happen.
Yep. So just for context there. So anyway, once the true hand is revealed here, I was everything I thought in the earlier episode. I was like, oh, well, there's that. There it is. Another drug person that actually works for the CIA. Tell me if you haven't seen this before. It's always that person. And so yeah, now the story really begins now. And I think
always the CIA.
Always CIA always doing such very noble work in these wars and all these other things outside the country, just to be the root of the problem and the pipeline for very valuable exchanges, guns, guns, all artillery, shall I say?
Yes, 100% so.
Drugs, money, hell, who knows what else they got? Because that just seems like the first three, but it don't stop there.
Man, I'm about to say, what do you think they created the CIA for? It definitely wasn't to do this stuff legally and with knowledge of everybody knowing what we're doing.
Yeah.
No, it's their secret op organization here.
Yeah.
But again, go a little deeper into the CIA here with Jose is when he fully shows Bumpy the operation. And the way the tone of their conversation changes. Because Bumpy was very adamant at first, I don't want to work for the CIA. I don't want to do this for the CIA. And Jose said, hey, I need to show you something. And he shows him all of these military weapons. So at this point, they're no longer considered military grade weapons, because that means they're coming from someone else. He's like, no, these are straight from the military here. And he shows him this operation. And in showing him this operation, he says the second most interesting thing in this episode. And that is, I'm pretty sure Joe won't care where these weapons come from or how they need to be used. It was kind of a shot at Bumpy to say, hey, you keep on telling me you don't want to work for the CIA. You don't work for anybody. But I know who will never question where I get my weapons from if you want to start asking these questions. What do you think about this last part of the conversation between Jose and Bumpy before Bumpy needs to fulfill his promise?
I'm like, hey, Bumpy, welcome to a party. I already knew. I was in the corner just kind of chilling. It's just like, hey, this is how business get down. What I thought was interesting that you didn't bring up was they talk about, like, when the Italians come after them, this is their protection. And they say, because when we get our next shipment, we'll be good to go. Then I thought about it, I was like, oh, y'all getting the shipment from the French still, right?
Yeah, they still are.
Yeah,
it's still from the Frenchman.
Yeah, and I'm glad you thought about that for a second because you obviously know where I'm going at with this now.
Oh yeah, another organization you can get pure Coke from.
Yeah, and it won't be long. It will not be long before we hear like, oh, we have a direct connection for blah 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 blah. The military is exchanging guns for blah blah blah, so that country can win their war, and we get drugs, and we can get money, or we give them money, completely cripple their economy. Tell me if you haven't heard that before. And then the U.S. wins. We win the war, and everything.
There you go. Because clearly, drugs solves all our problems humanly possible here.
But I will say what I like about. What I like about this is the duality in this episode, because as we get the closing shot with Dr. Hozan, so it's Hozan, one of them, Hozan or Hozan, and Malcolm X going to the city as we look like this is his, as he says, he's gonna be his guide and whatnot, and he says he would like to pray with him, which he says that be his utmost honor. So we see them going in a new direction because his knowledge has been expanded. We look at Bumpy too and his religion, and now he realized like, shit ain't just New York or France or coming from the French connection. Shit is a lot more deeper than you thought it was. Now wait till you go back and tell your wife saying, hey, you remember how the government was kind of after you? It's because the government wants to work with me. Like,
there you go.
It's like,
and they need to pin me in the corner for this to work out properly. And I think they want to use you to do so. And something very interesting you said. You say, well, I wonder how Godfather of Harlem is going to go, because we understand the transition goes from Bumpy to another drug dealer. That other drug dealer is very famous for one thing.
Yeah, getting his
the CIA.
Getting it off that
like it's a very interesting thing that we see setting up here.
Listen, if folks don't know, I just in case, because we know what we know here, but just understand that cocaine is coming to America in caskets. Yes. Just understand that. Hey, caskets, what do you mean? From the war, from the military who's died at war, who's coming back home.
I mean, at this point, it's a beautiful setup, because along with this and along with understanding who Jose Battle is, and if you don't know, please look it up. It's a very interesting story. We kind of already know who Bumpy is, but we know who Jose Battle is. It's a very interesting story to see the way all of that is set up. But understand the next transition that happens between that other drug dealer, and then we saw the movie with Tom Cruise of what happened next after the drug dealer, how they got things in. And then we see other shows starring another character that we brought up multiple times of how they got drugs in. It's a beautiful setup, but we see the setup starting here with Bumpy and Jose. So, what are your final thoughts, sir, on the episode Mecca?
Yeah, beginning Bumpy and them gaining trust in a very toasty way till them gaining trust by blood by the end. So
there you go.
We understand that now, as I said, their religion has been solidified, and we see the same thing with Malcolm X, excuse me, who is one of the most notable. He's one of the most notable Muslims, but also one of the most notable advocates for social injustice and advocates, not the word I'm looking for here, activists, excuse me, in social injustice, who thinks all he knows about being a Muslim is the way it should be, just to be opened his eyes up, to kind of be broken down, and then the clay re-strengthened and going forward. So we've seen him kind of get torn down to get rebuilt. And now he regains his trust within the faith of being a Muslim in Mecca. So like I really liked how the two characters that we started the series with, they still keep the focus with them, and really told some really good stories. A lot of good stories for folks to want to go and research all the characters that's sort of involved here. I don't know if Dr. Huzam is an actual person, but sure as hell makes me want to find out, like, how long is his journey with him? As he says, he'll be his guide. A guy that took a chance on him was the one who set him on this path that we known, the really high profile, the radical Malcolm X, to come back to. And it makes sense now. It always makes sense, because at one point I thought, like, damn, is he just mad? But understanding that what he was exposed to, and had to come back and understand why everybody ain't on his same level of knowledge and understanding.
Exactly.
I mean, drives the guy pretty mad there. So, man, I got to be honest, man. Episode 3, this is my favorite episode this season, and it's got to be within one of my favorite episodes in all of the seasons.
Hey, it's a beautiful way to build upon, especially when we know we're getting closer to the close of a historical storyline, and kind of wondering where we're gonna go next in this season with the character of Malcolm X. So this has been another Big Gold Belt review recap of Godfather of Harlem. Again, this is episode 3. This is Mecca. You can check this episode out after the episode airs on, it used to be called Epics, it's now called MGM Plus. Still the same cable channel. If you cable, if you got Epics on streaming, check it out there. After that episode airs, you can come back here on Big Gold Belt, check out this episode, comment or what you think about the storyline with Malcolm X. What do you think about this relationship with Jose Battle and Bumpy? What do you think about Mamie and her feelings towards Bumpy for having to give up what seemed to be her dream job that she had been waiting to do to separate herself from Bumpy? Let us know fully what you think about those comments as you watch our review recap of this. But also check out everything else on Big Gold Belt. It's Sunday. It's Big Gold Belt Day for all of you people out there who love to watch us. You get to watch this, then you get to watch our review of BMF, then you get to watch our review of Your Honor, then you get to watch our review of The Last of Us, then you get to put it all in the playlist and watch it over and over again for the remainder of the week as we fill all of your entertainment news. Again, thank you for tuning in. Subscribe, like, comment, and we'll be back with more entertainment. Peace,
y'all.